we made a concerted effort to really focus our practice in on Web3, on blockchain, on NFTs, on DAOs, on ICOs, because we knew that, from our perspective, and this is, again, there may be some really brilliant attorneys out there that can do all of this and do wills and estates and do family law and do criminal defense and all, but we wanted to really focus on those issues because there's so much information coming out so often that we want to be prepared to represent our clients better than anybody out there. And that's really how we came to the conclusion that we got to focus on this. And by the way, and this is something really important to know too, it's not that a different set of laws apply to Web3. That is not the case. There are plenty of traditional laws that apply to Web3. What's powerful is understanding the mechanics of the technology and the implications those have on existing laws. That's where the power is.
Welcome back to Cool Hand Crypto, where cinema, culture, and crypto collide. My name is Matt Silverman, and please remember to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast app. I first heard today's guest speak on a Twitter space, which has become a haven for Web3 crypto enthusiasts to gather, learn from each other, and have public conversations. I was listening to this talk in particular because it was about the various legal hurdles of navigating crypto and NFTs. I'm a filmmaker and co-founder of the Sherwood Project, and we've been so caught up in the creative decisions that we are now playing catch up when it comes to contracts, terms and conditions, forming a company, and general legal guidance to help ensure we're not just making sound creative decisions, but strong legal choices as well, in a space, no less, Web3 world, which really is the bleeding edge of new technology and laws. To help find our way through it, today's guest is an attorney and partner at Web3 Lawyers, co-founder and CEO of FarFetch Labs, and charismatic champion bridging Web2 into Web3. Carlos Garcia, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Thank you for that beautiful introduction, by the way. I appreciate it.
You earned it, my friend.
Thank you.
Let's start with the pivot into Web3. How did you go from regular law or law before Web3 into Web3 law?
It started with a very technical, important thing, which was a stale bag of Cheetos. We actually, at the time, my future partner, who I didn't know would be my partner and my chief technical officer at Farfetch Labs, Tony Munoz, shout out to Tony. He had an office right around the corner from our law firm. And my wife, who was also a paralegal, would walk by and she would see this stale, like literally this stale bag of Cheetos was sitting there for probably a solid week. All right. And my wife was like, who's this stale Cheeto guy? Just with over here, just leaving this on his desk. So I was like, yeah, that's really interesting. I should meet the stale Cheeto guy. We started talking, and one night, my partner, Courtney Bowie, and I were there, and Tony comes into our office, and he's like, hey, I have sort of it might be a contract issue. I don't really know. Can you guys take a look at it? And yeah, of course. And that really started us down the path of NFTs, of crypto, and doing all that stuff. So shortly thereafter, we got really into it. I mean, just went down a complete rabbit hole. Was lucky enough to link up with some people and become the chair of the ABA subcommittee for intellectual property and NFTs, where I met one of our other very close friends and partners, Eliana Torres. She's also a subcommittee chair, and it really all blossomed from there. And there was just a small group of us that would talk about this stuff all the time. A bunch of lawyers who, if I could take just a second of personal privilege to say a big thank you to Zach Lewis, Carlo D'Angelo, Ash Kernan, Oscar Urbina, Eliana Torres, and then Lynette and Angie who handle all the stuff over here, and Isaac and the rest of the crew. So that's the story. Stale Cheetos.
I love how enthusiastic you are about this. I do want to go down the rabbit hole with you a little bit as far as what's going on in law and why you need certain things and whatnot. But why are you so enthusiastic about it? I am too. And sometimes it's hard to convince people who don't get it or are new to it or don't understand it. what's so exciting about this new space. So what is so exciting about it to you?
Let me have the audience and you just imagine for a second uh, a world where instead of buying a piece of property, waiting 35 days, paying for title insurance, and having all these other transactional costs, uh, that the deeds of a state are reconciled with the blockchain, and that transaction becomes a 35-second transaction. Or um, something that I really care about too. I served in the Army for 17 years. That's actually where I met my partner. Uh, Imagine the VA reconciling medical records, and instead of service members having to wait months to get treated, uh, it becomes days or something much more manageable. And it's really, the decentralized nature, the immutable nature of the blockchain provides all these capabilities that I'm super excited about exploring. So it's cool. I think it was time for a change too, because I had been practicing criminal defense for a while, and it was super interesting to me. And it just so happens that I'm a big nerd, and there were a fair number of other big nerds in the space. So here we are.
I love it. What is FarFetch Labs?
Farfetch Labs is a blockchain and NFT technology company where we're really focused on pushing the boundaries of what Web3 and blockchain can do. Um, Another partner, our COO here at FarFetch Labs, Torito, he's a fellow veteran also, and we saw this acute need to explore the technology, and it needs to be explored because it's disruptive, and so the end result is just general improvement for the world, more efficient processes, having the ability to, instead of one giant company dictating what happens, it's all of us. It's your regular everyday guy that really does have a say and an impact on how information is used and digested. um, you know, uh, and that's something that's really important to us for a lot of reasons. But that's Farfetch Labs is here to explore blockchain, Web3, and NFTs, and just push the boundaries with what's possible.
How does someone work with FarFetch Labs? Because it is different than just calling Web3 lawyers, right? Web3 lawyers, I could find a contact form or your phone number and get in touch with you. But going through FarFetch Labs is a different process, right?
Yeah, slightly different. So we have kind of a traditional consulting model in some respects. When we launched our project, we're minting our project right now at farfetchlabs.io. So you can go there and you can mint a scientist. And the scientist NFT produces a vial token that can be redeemed for a number of things. Um, and we saw just this need for real sort of business, legal consulting, and the barrier to entry is pretty high when you start getting into consulting firms and legal services. So we thought, why don't we create an NFT project where you're going to collect NFTs anyway. You mint an NFT, and then you have access to certain things that might otherwise be harder to attain. So, lowering the barrier to entry and helping folks out that way. So the way that you get to Farfetch Labs is really through our Discord or our website. We have farfetchlabs.com, different than the IO, which is like our consulting website, come find us sort of thing. But the vast majority of people that we meet are either part of our community because they own an NFT, or at conferences. We just did Supermint in LA a couple weeks ago. So that's how you get a hold of us, either Discord, website, or catch us out at a conference.
I agree with you that Web3 is going to be pervasive across industries. It's going to be everywhere. But right now, what kind of projects and clients are you working with? Is it mostly NFT clients?
On the Farfetch Lab side, there's a fair number of what would be, I guess, if you can even use the term traditional NFT projects. People that are looking to launch an NFT, and we advise on various aspects of that, and provide full stack development services, things of that nature. So really, it's people from all walks of life. We have real estate companies. We have people that have established businesses that you wouldn't really think, hey, NFTs go well with this, but they see the potential to drive just that customer interaction with Web3, whether it be through gamification or just minting an NFT and developing that sort of bond between customer and company. And then on the Web3 side, gosh, we see on the Web3 lawyer side, we see all kinds of stuff. Um, a, Probably a lot more, what would be considered established folks are coming to Web3 lawyers, uh, largely because they see how quickly the industry is growing and the disjointed just guidance that's out there from various regulators and the government and different laws. And so now we have um, a group of people who've really, a lot of them have done pretty well for themselves over the last couple of years. And now they're ready to take that next step to be a little more formal, create businesses, make sure there's really good legal strategies in place.
A big buzzword in Web3 is utility. Farfetch Labs seems to have great utility, which is you buy the NFT and then you have access to a crack team of lawyers who and attorneys and insight, people with insight who can help you navigate this space. But what are you seeing in most of the projects either you're working with or you just hear about? Are they mainly using NFTs for marketing, or do they also have utility with the NFTs that they're offering?
I'll make a quick delineation. So on the Farfetch Lab side, we provide what would be considered probably more a ministerial, like legal things. So like, boilerplate contract between an artist and a project creator for IP rights, that sort of thing. So it's not terribly complex, in the legal respect. What we do see is, I'd say the number of projects that are coming out for just access to culture in a community are very big right now. Um, the utility, it can really be all over the place. There's some projects that go the gamification route, so they'll mint an NFT and say play to earn game coming, whenever. Um, but the people that we are the best fit for are the ones that have utility that's ready. They're already planning to implement utility from day one. And we realized early on the kind of company that we are, and there's plenty of labs out there. So I encourage everybody to sort of, if you're going to do a project and bring on consultants and full stack developers and everything, make sure it's a good cultural fit, because the place that we start from is utility first. Like you have to give your audience, your community, something of value for them to stay around. We're sort of getting past the phase where it's just cool art. There's nothing wrong with cool art. There's absolutely nothing wrong with cool art. But to be sustainable, there has to be more. And of course, like the exceptions are, the one of one established artists who are going to produce a project that's one piece. It's their craft. It's something very personal. They have a big following. There's a difference between that and some of the other communities that are created. So that's sort of our mantra around here. You got to be utility first to make it in the long run.
Yeah, amazing. I totally agree. And I think we're going to see a lot of NFT projects fail. And they're already starting to fail because they really aren't anything more than a profile picture or a JPEG. And people want more. I think that first run of that first buzz of NFTs that everyone went crazy about is gone. And so we're entering this new phase of people saying, well, what else? What else are we getting? I do want to go down the rabbit hole a little bit, and it will be for sort of selfish reasons, because as the Sherwood project, the project that I co-founded, is facing these questions, I think they would be helpful for other projects to hear. So what do you recommend for new NFT projects as far as legal protections?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good question. I think one of the biggest things is making sure that you create a business entity early on. Creating a business entity early on shields you from personal liability in a lot of respects. And you want to have that not just for when you launch the NFT project, if there's any number of things that can happen. I analogize it to, if I'm a store owner and I know there's a spill on aisle 4 and I do nothing to clean it up, someone slips and falls, well, I'm probably going to have a lawsuit on my hands. So similar to that, if you have a flaw in your user interface or something that allows a third-party bad actor to come in and exploit your community, and you know about it, you want to have some protections in place. Number one, you should clean it up. But like terms of service, terms of use, and having a business entity are really important to protecting your own personal wealth. The other thing on sort of the back end before, and I don't mean back end development, I mean just creating the project itself. The other things that it's very helpful for are, contracting. Let's say you have an artist or a developer that you're going to do a work for hire contract with. Things go south. Maybe they say you owe them money. They didn't get paid out correctly, or whatever the case may be. Having a business entity protects your personal wealth in that respect too. So I'd say the biggest things for projects starting out to know that they should have are, number one, have an established business entity. And it's not hard to do. LLC, corporation. If you need really good advice on it, just get with an attorney and see what they think. Number two, do contracts. This is an industry where, and I don't mean smart contracts, just to sort of draw a differentiation there for the audience. You and I know, Matt, that smart contracts are really just it's a piece of code that tells you sort of what's going to happen when a certain event happens. It's more of an if-then statement. What I'm talking about right here are traditional pen and paper contracts. Have contracts in place to protect yourself, and more importantly, to set expectations between yourself, developers, artists, etc. The third thing is have a good terms of use, terms of service on your website. Make sure that you insulate yourself from liability as best you can. And the law is not really designed so that we get ahead of every single problem and prevent it from happening. It's largely reactionary. But if you have some mitigating things in place, it makes it a heck of a lot easier to keep business going and just make sure operations aren't interrupted. And then sort of the third, fourth, and fifth things, I'll lump those all together. Make sure you talk to somebody who knows about the key sort of big ticket items in the industry right now, like taxes, securities, that sort of thing. You got to pay taxes on digital assets. Big misconception out there about how that works. There's some nuanced rules that don't apply in certain circumstances. Again, not legal advice, just general information. And then if you ever run into a situation where, just ask yourself a basic question. In this offering, am I giving somebody something that they are going to expect some kind of monetary return on, or something that can kind of be construed as an investment? And if the answer is yes, just get some advice from an attorney before launching it, because it's always better to be proactive rather than reactive with business and the law.
Well said. So thank you for that. I've partnered with Luke Dale. He's my co-founder of the Sherwood Project. We are 50-50 partners. We know that, but we also recognize that we probably should have a shareholders agreement of some kind. What is your recommendation as far as people who are partnering with other people on projects?
That's a great question, Matt, also. And that goes right along with creating a business entity. So anytime you create a business entity with multiple partners, you want to make sure that everybody is on the same page. You want to make sure to set expectations. And that really addresses a lot of problems early on, whether it's a capital contribution or just the role somebody is going to play in the organization. Always a good idea. So if you're creating an LLC, an operating agreement is a great tool for that. And it's fairly easy for you to set up as long as both people know what is being expected by the other party. If you're going to go the C Corp route, just a corporation, you're going to want to have in place some bylaws that say, basically how the organization is governed. And then we get into things like shareholders and how they vote and just sort of the nuts and bolts of how the business is run. Choosing whether you want to do an LLC or a C Corp, probably a good idea to just get with an attorney, CPA, someone who knows the ins and outs. There's going to be both tax implications as well as just how the business is governed. And actually, this is a good time to just briefly mention DAOs. That is a big buzzword right now in the industry. I'm sure you've heard it a bunch of times. Everyone's like, I want a DAO. I need to create a DAO, 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 DAO.
Before you even dig in, what is a DAO?
So a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. And think of it more as the mechanics to running and governing a business rather than the business itself. Um, and really, I encourage people to take a step back and be very deliberate about why they want to create any business entity, much less a DAO, and see what the implications are. And here's some really important things for everybody to know. Okay. A DAO, as it stands, is really only legally recognized as a business entity in one jurisdiction right now. That's Wyoming. Anywhere else, you're going to want to have a strategy in place where the DAO is sort of used or owned by another business entity that provides proper protections. So let's say, in theory, let's say you're in California, okay, and you want to start a DAO, and you think, okay, I got my DAO. Everyone's protected just like they would be with an LLC, right? Piercing the corporate, all that stuff. That's not necessarily the case. So it does pay dividends to consult with people up front to make sure that everybody is getting the protections that they would normally expect from a business entity, and to make sure that it's set up properly, just so that, again, things can keep running smoothly. Another great reason why proactiveness is it's way harder to clean up a mess when there's certain things done, uh, you know, that are out of your control. So and that applies to pretty much every case ever in the law.
Are you seeing actual DAOs being formulated? Because I see a lot of different projects that are calling themselves DAOs, but they're not DAOs. They're really run by one person or two people, and they try to give, sometimes in honest, good, intentions, to give some of the power back to the community. But it's not really a DAO. It's really run by one person. So are you seeing real decentralized autonomous organizations being made?
Yes, and there's several platforms that they can be created on now. Um, a lot of people that are way smarter than me have created sort of turnkey ways to create a DAO. Um, but yeah, and that's sort of a big question with DAOs, right? Like, if everybody runs it, who's responsible for things at the end of the day? Um, and that's why I just encourage people to be really deliberate. What is it that you're looking for in your business? Are you looking for a new way to govern and just make everyone feel heard? Are you looking for just simple liability protections? Are you looking to do something cool and trendy, which is, in so much as it doesn't conflict with other business interests and operations, is okay too? But just, that thoughtfulness before just saying, hey, I heard about a DAO. It has three letters, sounds super cool. Found a domain that ends in DAO. Let's make it happen. Just be more thoughtful about it before hopping in there.
Let's dig into work for hire contracts a little bit more. Why is it so important to have those contracts in place, especially with artists? I see a lot of projects who jump into different relationships with artists, but there's really no agreement between them, and it creates difficulties later, or it can create difficulties later. So why is it so important to make sure that when you're working with an artist, or if you are an artist, you have a proper legal agreement?
That is a very important aspect of the business when it comes to intellectual property, and I think the work for hire with artists is probably the easiest to understand. Um, so anytime you're going to be giving out intellectual property, whether it's just a sale of an NFT, to a certain extent, it's almost always going to come with some acquisition of intellectual property. And maybe it's just a personal use license. I can enjoy it for myself. Um, but intellectual property starts way before that. Okay, intellectual property, in the sense of an NFT, an NFT project, when you're doing work for hires, you want to make sure that it's clear with the artist that if you're trying to acquire all the intellectual property for them, full intellectual property rights, you want to have that lined out in the contract so that you don't inadvertently get caught off guard once you mint, and then the artist comes and says, well, I actually need royalties from that. I actually need a piece of the pie as this project grows. And the crazy thing is with this industry is that um, no one cares when there's no money to be made. A lot of people care when a lot of money is being made, and sometimes you don't know with a project until after mint and a community is established what the case might be. So getting a clean chain of intellectual property is really, really important. And usually where that starts is these work for hire contracts to make sure exactly who's commissioned to do what, and it'll just save you a lot of time and hassle later on.
Can you talk a little bit more about that as far as real world examples? So I know that Bored Apes, I believe, they give, if I might be wrong about this, but I think they give complete IP rights to the owner. So if you own a Bored Ape, you can do whatever you want with it, I believe, as opposed to a Matrix NFT or a Disney NFT or some of these other ones where you buy it but you don't own the IP rights. You just own, I guess, the NFT. So can you sort of help navigate that difference between buying an NFT but not necessarily owning everything about it?
There's just a lot of misconceptions in the industry. So you're correct that Bored Ape Yacht Club holders do get commercial use rights. Now that is something that's different than a full acquisition of complete and total intellectual property rights. Commercial use means that you can use the asset in a variety of ways. There's also another project out there right now. Shout out to my friendly pandas who may watch this. The Friendly Panda community has been growing. Great group of people. And Farfetch Labs, our NFTs, come with commercial use rights. So let's say you get a Farfetch Lab scientist or maybe a Friendly Panda, and you want to create a plumbing company, and you want to call it Scientist Plumbing. Well, you can use our NFT as your mascot, so to speak. Now, the part that comes into play that's very important for people to remember, and a reason for projects to really look at how they craft these grants of commercial use rights, is you always want to make sure that people know they don't get the commercial use rights in perpetuity. So if you get the NFT, you have the commercial use rights while you have the NFT. But once you sell it, once you no longer own that, you no longer have an entitlement to the commercial use rights. And there's some other projects. Shout out to the Crypto Geeks. That's another one that we're working on. Great artist. He's actually one of our developers too, Miklo. And so that's very important to understand. And from an NFT consumer standpoint, always a good idea to look at what intellectual property rights you're getting with a project.
My mind might melt in this part of the conversation, but the securities aspect of NFTs, I've talked to someone previously who spent the entire conversation telling me that their project was not a security. It was not a security. Why is this such a hot topic with NFTs?
This is a very good time to talk about this too. So let me rewind the clock about a week and a half or so. The SEC came out with some guidance that said there will be no amnesty or safe harbor for people that create something that is deemed to be a security or that we think is going to be a security. As attorneys, you can imagine that puts us in a real weird position because it's like, okay, if you have a client come in, how do you best protect them? Normally, a mitigating factor would be self-reporting. So it's a really interesting legal conundrum, and something that we're following really closely. To be a security, so let me tell you what this means. Okay, if you're a security, if your offering is considered a security or an investment contract, which classifies you as a security, you're going to be regulated by the SEC. So there's a bunch of disclosures that are going to be required. You're going to have to put into place some good business practices to capture the information that needs to be delivered to the SEC. It's just a more time-intensive practice. So that's all that really means. I know we everyone's like, it's not a security. We got to get around it. But, there is also an argument to be made for projects that say, you know what, we're security. I know it's going to take a few months to get filings through and everything, but we'll go ahead and do it. The other part about being a security is that there's KYC, or know your customer, protocols that have to be followed. So in a lot of respects, it limits who can hold your asset if it's considered a security. So that's another important part. I don't want to just be dismissive of that, because the NFT world and the crypto world are very international communities. So there are some concerns, but let me give you the meat and potatoes. Okay. The test for something being classified as a security is actually based on something called the Howey test. It comes from an old case about an orange grove, very very dated case. Okay, and basically it says, is there an investment of money into a common enterprise with the expectations solely based on the efforts of others? And if the answer is yes, then it's going to be considered an investment contract and therefore a security, and there's a bunch of registration requirements. Now there's a bunch of there's exceptions to being considered a security, which they're kind of a snoozer, so I won't do a total deep dive into them. But again, this is why it's worth your time and resources to consult with an attorney or some other business professional. If you ever have a project where it's you're going to buy something and expect a profit in return based on the efforts of others. The interesting part for me as an attorney is looking at the prong of the test that considers the efforts of others. So what does it mean for some profits to be derived solely on the basis of efforts of others? Is it enough that I purchase this and then become a member of the Discord community and I get in there and I talk about it, and I enjoy other community activities? Is that enough to say that it's not solely based on the efforts of others? Is it enough to show that I went to Twitter Spaces and really helped hype up and get the project to where it is? So there's all these really interesting questions that have yet to be answered. But again, it's a really fact-specific, information-intensive process to see, okay, are we gonna be in a position here where we're gonna need to defend something in court? And I always use this common sense test. Okay, whenever we're about to do something, I think to myself, can I explain what is about to happen here to a judge or a jury in just a few sentences? And if the answer is no, then I really, really rethink it. And that's just sort of like our cursory test for whether or not to do something.
Yeah, thank you. I think you're the first guest I've had on the show who is answering every question I would have asked before I asked it. You're doing a great job of just unpacking everything before I can get to it. So you're making my job easy.
You're a good host, Matt. You're a great host.
I want to go just a little bit further with what you're saying, because I am hearing you, but I'm still... And maybe this is the problem. Maybe it's impossible for a project to figure this out on their own without consulting someone like yourself to help guide them through it. But how do projects, because I get this sense that projects might slip into being a security by accident, that they're doing something that they think is not that, and then they slip into it. So is there an easy way to tell if you're sort of slipping? I heard what you just said, but it still feels with DAOs and I hear about a lot of NFT projects that are between royalties or benefiting, in some way with money, and I say, is this a security? I'm not quite sure. So is there any easy way to figure out if you're slipping into that territory or not really? You have to look at the whole package and digest it with an expert like yourself to really come to that conclusion.
It's hard for me to say whether there's a quote unquote easy way. I guess my response to that would really just be, look, if you have something of value going back to someone, in so much as you have the resources, consult with someone before doing it. Now, I'll give you a few practical examples too, because I really want to drive this point home with the audience. So we use something, it's a blockchain case litigation tracker. And what a lot of courts have said is you can write up a great terms of use. You can put into that terms of use that you're marketing a collectible, that it is not a security, that it's not an investment, and disclaim every single thing that would pertain to the Howey test or something that would make the offering into a security. Uh, but what courts are really going to look at is what in fact happens. So you can say things all you want. It's not that doesn't matter at all. It's that is only a portion of what's going to be tested and evaluated by that court. So you can say all day it's not a security, but if the mechanics of it really work like a security, the disclaimer is probably not in itself gonna save you. So I don't know that there's an easy way to just say, yeah, it's not going to be a security. I would just say, get out there, find some information. The SEC guidance is publicly available to everybody. Poke around on the SEC website. And look, man, I don't come from a family of lawyers or doctors or anything like that. I actually come from a very, lower middle class Mexican family in Pueblo, Colorado. And I realized that the barrier to entry to get legal services and consulting services can seem very high sometimes. So I analogize the practice of law to hiring an electrician. Okay, if if I have a light bulb go out up here, I could probably get on a ladder and change that thing out. If I have an electrical socket go bad, I could probably do that. But I can't rewire my whole house. I wouldn't know how to do that. I wouldn't know how to ground a house or do, there's just a lot of things I wouldn't know how to do. Same thing when it comes to the law. Okay, do you always need an attorney for everything? No. There's probably going to be some attorneys that see that. They're like, no, you need an attorney for everything, right? Not the case. What you should be thinking about are different factors, not necessarily a yes or no test, but think about the factors. Is it something that you have the ability to read and understand? Is there enough information available to the public to make you feel comfortable doing whatever you're going to do? And remember, an attorney, we're a conduit. We're a representative, an advocate, a trusted advisor. At the end of the day, it's going to be the person pursuing the action that's ultimately going to be responsible. So figure out if it's something that falls into your comfort level. And if it does, great. And if not, then find some people. Look for materials online. Schedule a consultation with an attorney. Really, really get out there and get in depth. And I'd also say, the cost thing is weird when it comes to legal services. So like if I told you that by going to an attorney, you'd spend $100 and get it right the first time, or you could wait for something to deteriorate and fall apart, and it's going to cost $100,000. Well, that in a lot of respects, that just pure economically driven decision, right? But we're in a world that's full of startups and new projects and people who haven't done these things before and potentially limited resources. So, I would just say if you can do it, and if not, then do a lot of reading and research. Again, not legal advice, just sort of my 2 cents on the issue.
Because Web3 is such a new frontier, are you equipped to, not just you, but is any attorney equipped to deal with the projects because there's new laws and new things happening all the time? Or know that you're waiting on certain decisions and you're waiting on certain new laws to happen? Or I've heard both. I've heard some people say this is a new frontier and we're figuring it out. And I've heard other people say it's all boilerplate and we're really just tweaking some language.
I don't fancy myself an expert. I think that this is an industry where there are plenty of attorneys that are equipped to deal with these issues. And when you get right down to it, it's not like anybody has a choice anyway. Okay, the technology is moving forward. So I think that there are a good number of attorneys who really know what they're doing, and really we're operating off of the best information possible. And that includes everybody in the NFT and crypto spaces. You operate off of the best information possible. You make the best decisions you can, knowing that there's some amount of assumed risk, which isn't, a whole lot different from some other industries. There's always going to be some risk there. But we made a concerted effort to really focus our practice in on Web3, on blockchain, on NFTs, on DAOs, on ICOs, because we knew that, from our perspective, and this is, again, there may be some really brilliant attorneys out there that can do all of this and do wills and estates and do family law and do criminal defense and all, but we wanted to really focus on those issues because there's so much information coming out so often that we want to be prepared to represent our clients better than anybody out there. And that's really how we came to the conclusion that we got to focus on this. And by the way, and this is something really important to know too, it's not that a different set of laws apply to Web3. That is not the case. There are plenty of traditional laws that apply to Web3. What's powerful is understanding the mechanics of the technology and the implications those have on existing laws. That's where the power is. It's not, I don't go into the metaverse and say, all right, guys, this is Metaverse Law 101. Let me teach you this new stuff.
Not yet.
That's not the case. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, not yet. Yeah, it could be a different podcast in a few years, right? But really, it's just applying the mechanics of the technology to existing laws, which fortunately, we have a great team of folks here that has really come a long way, and some really trusted advisors and experienced attorneys that have been practicing law for longer than I've been alive that have come on board to help out.
Why is it important to go to NFTLA or any of these conferences and represent yourself?
Because I want people to know that we're out here and that we exist, and I really, really think that despite the metaverse and all the things that we do online, I really love that people know that the face-to-face human interaction is what makes a difference. I want people to know that it is, in fact, a good idea to live largely in the real world and still have a metaverse life as well. I want people to understand that the metaverse and being Web3 and crypto native and all that stuff doesn't mean that we have to separate ourselves in personal face-to-face relationships as people. It just means we have another avenue of communication. So that's something that's really, really, really important to me. So, and the other thing is, I think when people make an assessment of an attorney, they really picture themselves in a couple of scenarios, whether it's going to go to court or some negotiation or not. I think a lot of people say, okay, if I step into a courtroom or a room to negotiate, is this person going to be able to get me there? Are they going to put up a W? And they make it the decision largely based on just interpersonal communication skills. And so I am not, it's hard for me to communicate all of that online. Even in this podcast, like if we were sitting there in the room right now, there would be so much more feedback between us. We see how are our hands folded? How are our legs crossed? What do our breaths sound like? What's the temperature of the room? Is there a little bit of perspiration? Like all these different factors that you only get from real life communications. And I just enjoy talking, if you couldn't tell already.
Yeah, well, you're very good at it, and you're absolutely right. I mean, even this podcast has just been something where I can reach out to people in the middle of a pandemic and make that connection, but it is definitely no substitute for being in person, as you said. So it's very important. I'm conscious of your time, but how can people reach you? And if you're listening to this, at the very worst, contact Carlos, and you'll have a great conversation. And
there you go.
You'll work together. But how do people reach you? And is there anything else we've left on the table here that you want to get across in this Web3 space that we haven't touched on?
I think we've actually covered a lot, and it's really good. I think my goal with these conversations is always have people walking away knowing more than they knew before, but with some questions too, some new questions. So the best way to find me is probably on social media. It's carlosg_ESQ on both Instagram and Twitter. And then obviously our social media accounts for Web3 Lawyers. It's Web3_Lawyers on both Instagram and Twitter. And then also be sure to follow Farfetch Labs, which is just at Farfetch Labs on both Instagram and Twitter. You can find myself and my partners there. I have a LinkedIn profile also. My full name is Carlos Garcia Aguilar. So if you're going the LinkedIn route, I know that's kind of like the stuffy social media, but I'm still on there. I still really enjoy it, especially with colleagues. But that's the best way to find me is social media. So just carlosg_ESQ.
And for more general information, web3lawyers.io and farfetchedlabs.com.
Yes, and then when people are ready to mint their scientists to use our VILE token for consultations for strategic business issues, go to farfetchlabs.io and you can mint a scientist that produces the VILE token. And I'll give you a little more alpha for the crowd. Depending on when this airs, we will be launching our Genesis collection of crypto geeks, and it's so cool. Can I tell you about this? I nerd out when I think about how this all works. So, Crypto Geeks is really, and a lot of credit goes to the artist, to Miklo, to Guillermo. He's just fantastic artist, and Isaac who helped set up the website, and Latinoverse and some of our other partners who have really helped. But Crypto Geeks is designed to be a community for in real life events where we have three groups of people. We have folks that are established in the industry, some high profile people that have done projects, a group of people that's getting ready to do projects or interested in doing projects, and then a bunch of enablers. So venture capitalists, accountants, lawyers, and bringing them together in one place for events at like NFTLA, NFT NYC, things like that. And then having that conversation continue in Discord in our community, because you and I have both probably been to events where you meet a bunch of people and you're like, oh my gosh, how do I remember everybody's name? And that's where the discussion starts. And we want to drive that discussion. From there, the way it fits into the bigger picture is they come on over to Farfetch Labs when they're ready to do something, when they're ready to put their innovation out there for the world. And that's how the whole sort of ecosystem works. And so we'll be launching Crypto Geeks, which will be 333 in the Genesis collection. They're also going to produce a token that can be used in the ecosystem. And we're just super excited about it. So, Farfetch Labs, Web3 Lawyers, Crypto Geeks, all that stuff is just, we have so much fun doing it. And I have such a great team. Like all of this is a team effort. So it's awesome.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And I have a feeling we'll be talking more, and please consider this an open invitation to Cool Hand Crypto, because I know you're on the front lines of all this, and it's extremely educational and important and interesting to hear about. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it.